I'm Cherylanne Skolnicki, and this is Brilliant Balance, the show for working women who are ready to shine. Each week, I bring you ideas, inspiration, and insight on balance, business, and getting it all done gracefully. You ready? Let's be brilliant. This is episode 315 of the Brilliant Balance podcast. Today, we're talking about finding your people and sharing reflections from the Brilliant Balance retreat. So today on the show, I am diving into a topic that is really close to the hearts of many of you I know, many of the professional working mothers who listen to this show. We're going to talk about the power of community and the importance of finding your people. You know, the journey of balancing a career and raising a family and striving for excellence in both of those areas can, of course, be a demanding one. But the good news is you are definitely not alone. In fact, in today's episode, I'm going to talk about the remarkable impact of having a supportive community by your side. And all throughout this episode, I'm going to share data that underscores just how essential community is in our lives. But before we get into that nitty-gritty, let's take a minute to just acknowledge the unique challenges that I know many of you face every day. I mean, it's really no secret that we as professionals who are working mothers have to deal with these dual pressures of career and family. But what's not talked about as often is the isolation that can come with that. The Pew Research Center, if you've heard of them, have found that working mothers consistently report feeling a strain from trying to strike that elusive balance. And it really isn't just about the work-life balance itself. It's the pressure to really excel in both of those areas that can be particularly challenging. In fact, 70% of working mothers reported feeling a significant amount of pressure to be a good mother. And that's the pressure that leads us to self-doubt and anxiety and at times isolation. Because as we grapple with the notion that we have to do it all and do it perfectly, and therefore we can't let anyone in on how we're feeling. So we kind of suffer in silence, right? And these statistics are just like a stark reminder of the challenges that we face as professional working mothers. And they really underscore the need for support systems and communities that can help to alleviate some of that isolation and give us a safe space where we can share our experiences together, both the highs and the lows. And honestly, while this can sound like a nice to have, like, wouldn't it be great if we all had time to hang out together? It's actually rooted in science. There's research from the American Psychological Association that highlights there are these really undeniable benefits of social connections, right? We produce more of the feel-good chemicals, if I just say it in shorthand, when we are in connection with one another. And this isn't just about sharing a laugh or having a good time or going out for drinks with your friends. It's about feeling really understood and supported when we're right in the midst of life's biggest challenges. And yet, when they asked women how close they felt to others emotionally, only 39% of adults in the United States said that they felt very connected to others. So that data and others caught the attention of the U.S. Surgeon General. If you have heard Vivek Murthy, who has been on a bit of a media tour this year, he has issued an advisory on loneliness and deemed it a public health crisis. So we typically aren't looking at conditions like loneliness when we think about the Surgeon General, right? We think about smoking cessation or obesity or childhood nutrition. We're not really thinking about something like loneliness, but this particular Surgeon General has brought it to the top of his priority list. And one of the things he says is that our epidemic of loneliness and isolation has really been an underappreciated public health crisis that has harmed individual and societal health. Our relationships are a source of healing and well-being hiding in plain sight, one that can help us live healthier, more fulfilled, and more productive lives. And given the significant health consequences of loneliness and isolation, We have to prioritize building social connection the same way that we've prioritized other critical public health issues, such as tobacco, obesity, and substance use disorders, so that together we can build a country that's healthier, more resilient, less lonely, and more connected. So, as I was getting ready for this episode, I nerded out by going deep into the Surgeon General's advisory. I'm going to link that in the show notes in case you're curious about really reading the full document. It's long, I'll warn you. But he lays out a framework for the United States to establish a national strategy to advance social connection. And I think this is so important. I wanted to understand what the strategies were, and there were 6 that he dug into. I'm going to give you the really, really top level of 4 of them here. There's a couple of others. I think they're a little less relevant for this episode. But one of the ones he talks about is social infrastructure, right? Because connections aren't just influenced by our individual interactions with each other. They're influenced by the physical elements of our communities, like parks and libraries and playgrounds, right? Places where people gather, and the programs and the policies that support those things. So if you think about maybe a previous generation and how much time they may have spent in public places, gathering, right? Especially in free public places. I'm naming parks and libraries and playgrounds. Like, these are all free places. Or maybe if you think about places you may have frequented when your children were really young, or maybe you have really young children now. I spent more time at parks and libraries and playgrounds when I had very young children than at any other time in my life. So we want to see a social infrastructure that designs environments that really promote connection, where you might take your kids to the playground and run into another mom with kids the same age, right? You might go to a library and run into someone else who has taken an emerging reader there. So I think the notion of institutions and community connection programs that can really bring people together is one of the important platforms. The second one he talked about was pro-connection public policies. And this is where we get into things like paid family leave, right? Where we can support and enable more connection among a community or a family at important inflection points. Aging parents, maternity and paternity care right after the addition of children to our family. This notion of family leave, where we can be with our people when they need us most, would be one example of a policy that would help to decrease loneliness and increase connection. Now, the next one you're definitely going to head nod to, which is he is urging a reevaluation of our relationship with technology and ensuring that how we interact digitally doesn't detract from our meaningful and deeply healing connections with others. And this is one I know I am guilty of, my family is guilty of. We're really working at this and trying to be conscious of how can we reevaluate our relationship with technology. And all you have to do is notice how often you have multiple family members gathered in one room, but not interacting with each other because each of them is interacting with their personal device to know that this is a thing, right? This really is a thing. And yet it goes beyond just our devices like our phones and our, iPads and laptops. Think about how someone's ability to order. And look, I'm an Amazon Prime member and I love it. But think about how my ability to order things from Amazon Prime decreases the number of social interactions that I might be having in stores, right? So this is a double-edged situation. There are positives of it for sure in terms of efficiency, but also the advent of that technology is decreasing our human connection. And then the fourth strategy that I want to highlight from the Surgeon General's work is the imperative to cultivate a culture of connection. It's kind of a mouthful. Cultivate a culture of connection. But what he's saying is that the informal practices of everyday life, the norms and the culture of how we engage with one another, significantly influence the relationships that we have. And we can't really be successful in the other pillars that he's recommending without a culture that values connection. So I'm a big fan of this work, if you can't tell. I think this is exactly the kind of thing I want our smartest people in the country thinking about, right? What are we going to do systemically? But I also want us thinking about what we can do individually. And I have said for a long time that it's my observation that women in particular, maybe this is true for men also, but women in particular build true community when they have 3 things. The first is frequency of contact. The second is the opportunity for conversation. And the third is a shared sensibility or mutual respect. So when I have looked at places in my life where friendship has blossomed, right, or connection has really deepened, that level of intimacy has gone up quickly, those three things were always present. Frequency of contact, no less than weekly, where there is a drumbeat of connection you can count on, it's scheduled, it's happening. The opportunity for conversation. It is not the same, I don't think, for women to be in connection with one another, but not able to speak. So as an example, I used to take a hot yoga class at a studio a number of years ago, and I loved that class, but there was no conversation, right? Yoga is kind of by nature a silent practice. So it didn't feel the same as when I was in a running group that met regularly and there was a conversation happening the entire time that we were running. Right? And that third element of a shared sensibility or a mutual respect, I think is important. If we are in small groups of people, but we don't feel that we have enough in common with them, and it doesn't mean that there can't be diversity, but there has to be a thread. Something about us, probably psychographically, has to be connecting us. And that's why I'm calling it a shared sensibility. And there has to be a deep level of mutual respect within that group. So when I look back at my life, I personally experienced this. And let's say as an adult, because I think we would all say we got some of this in school. I personally experienced this through a running group, which was everything from running with one person at a time to running with a group of maybe 3 to 4 people to running with a much larger running group that would meet weekly. That drumbeat of frequency of contact and the opportunity for conversation and the fact that we had a shared goal really bonded those running groups. I've had this in Bible studies and book clubs where, again, small group of people meeting with a regular cadence, the chance for conversation, right? And then even the community that I built during grad school. When I was getting my MBA, there was a lot of small group projects. There were social events happening. We were all in classes together. I got my MBA as part of an evening program while I was working full time. So for 3 years, I was going to classes a couple of nights a week with the same people. And that regular, frequent contact where we were in conversation and we had breaks together, those are the times that I look back on that deeply built community. Hi, it's Cherylanne. Thanks for listening. Did you know that the ideas I share on this show are things I also can help you implement? If you want me in your corner helping you find more time for what fills you up, go to brilliant-balance.com/schedule and sign up for a free exploratory call. Give yourself this time. You'll be so glad you did. And so it's not surprising that that's really core to what I'm trying to do with Brilliant Balance. Right? I thought about those 3 principles as how can I really help to cultivate a community? And I got a delightful reminder of the power of this connection a couple of weeks ago when I hosted our annual retreat. So in mid-October, we had about 50 women gather in Cincinnati for 2 days together, and it was so enriching. Now, this is a community of women who meets regularly online via Zoom. Right? When we have women who are in coaching programs, we have regular group calls on Zoom. So that's the frequency enabler, right? Since we are spread out from coast to coast and across a few countries, the best way for us to really get together is online via Zoom. But when you get a whole bunch of us in a room, magic happens. It is crazy how the energy escalates and the whole room is buzzing when we are there in person. It's such an important reminder that while we certainly can connect digitally and will continue to, those in-person connection points are just not to be missed, right? When the opportunity is there to have them, we want to have them and fully embrace them. And it was interesting that I was able to be both a part of the community and also do some reflecting on what has been built, how that community has evolved and taken on a life of its own. I will be perfectly honest. I get asked this question a lot, like, did you know this is what it would look like, after you'd been at this for 13 years? Absolutely not. When I initially conceived of the Brilliant Balance idea, I thought of it as a one-on-one experience where I would meet with people individually and support them and help them achieve their goals and unlock possibilities. And that is still very much a part of what is happening inside of the company. But this element of community, there were a few seeds planted early on, candidly, by some of the women I was coaching who were like, it would be cool to meet some other people who are doing this too. And so we started adding group calls, and then there was this sort of collective desire to get together in person. We thought, okay, we'll try that. And it's just really evolved organically over the years. So to step back and reflect on where are we now at this juncture was really gratifying because it truly is a reflection of the kinds of women who have come into this community in a big way. So when I was reflecting on the characteristics of the community itself, like how would I describe it? There were a few things that were on full display during this gathering in October. And here's what I noticed. I think we have a both and culture, right? It's not an either or, it's a both and culture. We're really looking for nuance. We are looking for how do we broadly encompass what this community needs over time because it's dynamic, right? We're not always in the same place. And so what I mean by that, I'm going to give you 4 examples. One is we are focused on growth and grace. Growth and grace. Everybody in this community is always looking for a new edge, right? What's the next thing I can learn? How can I stay curious instead of closed off? Can I explore a new possibility? And also, everyone in this community goes through periods where they have to say, I'm doing enough, right? And we want to honor you are doing enough, right? This is not a time to be pushing full speed ahead. So that duality of growth and grace and really sort of understanding when either is needed is a really central part of the community. Another thing I noticed is we equally ride the highs and lows together. There's this embracing of the full momentum cycle, right? There is so much celebration when someone is winning, right? It's a healthy level of competitive in that I think when someone has a big win, it's inspiring to other women that they can do it too. But there is so much support and celebration when someone is winning. But there is also so much support when someone shows up in a call or at an event feeling like they'll never win again. I don't know what happened, but I've clearly lost it all. And they're riddled with imposter syndrome and they're in their own way. And that community just comes in around them to say, we've got you. Listen, how are we going to switch the energy here? How quickly can we get you back into momentum? So riding both the highs and lows together is the second thing I see in spades. The third thing I see is there is a give and take, both give and take, right? No one in this community shows up just to take. There's always this immediate offering of like, how can I support you? What can I do for you? What can I share with you from my experience that might accelerate your journey? And also the humility to say, here's what I need. Right? So that other people can turn around and give it to them. So that give and take, sort of the teach and learn, being able to sit in both of those seats at various times creates this environment of really strong peer mentorship, right? It lets us crowdsource some of the best ideas from one another when we as an individual are facing the unknown or we're doing something for the very first time. We have a big range of ages and life stages and career maturity. And so this peer mentorship idea where we can vacillate between give and take is so powerful. And the fourth dynamic that I really got to see was that we widen and tighten the circle. We widen and tighten the circle. There is so much talk inside of our community of the collective experience of not being included at some point in our lives, right? Whether we have to look all the way back to grade school or whether it was the proverbial middle school, right? Which everyone cites as kind of a low point, or whether it was in high school or in college or adulthood, that notion of not feeling like we had a seat at the table or we were in the circle. Virtually everyone has had that experience at some point in their lives. And this community of women seems to have learned from it in a way that they're committed to widening the circle, If you want to come in, we are going to open up a spot and bring you in and make you feel welcome and help you acclimate. And then we're going to tighten that circle around you as a means of protection. So when the circle tightens, it's a sense of, listen, you might be getting pelted from the outside, but we've got you, right? You might feel unsupported at work or in your extended family or in your neighborhood, but this group has you. So that widen and tighten dynamic, it was just beautiful to watch unfold inside of the room when everyone was together. So I kept reflecting on this, and I was so delighted that my team had the good sense to ask the women who attended. We did like a, as you do, a closing like feedback or questionnaire that people did digitally on the last day of the event. And one of the questions they asked was, how would you describe brilliant balance to someone else in one sentence? And I have spent more time than is probably reasonable reading these answers over and over again, because it's so interesting to me how the collective of these answers really does fully describe the community, right? Everyone has a slightly different collection of words, but there are themes that really stood out. So I'm going to read just a few of these. I'm not going to tell you who said them. I'm going to read a few of these statements of how people who are on the inside would describe brilliant balance to someone who doesn't really know what it is, right? So here's the first one. Brilliant balance is a supportive community of smart, ambitious women seeking more from life. Another one, it's a group of ambitious and positive-minded women who want to help you live your dreams. Another, it's a supportive network of women that push you to be your best and to reach your full potential. Another, it's a sisterhood of ambitious women trying to level up. It's a caring community of powerful women who are changing the world. It's my lifeline as a full-time working mom who is unwilling to give up my dreams and purpose, even when life pulls in 1,000 other directions. And it's a sisterhood that understands and supports my ambition and embraces my weaknesses. So I could go on. There were 50 plus women at this. We have these sentences from all of them, but I thought just that small collection does such a beautiful job of illustrating in their own words what this community means to them. And that was the greatest gift of all to me, walking out of that event and sort of having the opportunity to reflect on what has each of these women brought to this community. And if you are a part of this community and you are an alumni of a program, or we have been in a coaching relationship, I bet that something in that resonates with you, even if you're not actively in coaching today. Of course, if you're listening and you're somebody who is in coaching, whether you were able to attend retreat or not, I bet that you would agree with some of the words that were included in that collection. But maybe most importantly, if you are a podcast listener, maybe this is the first episode you've listened to. Maybe you've been listening to the podcast for a while, but you're not really sure what goes on inside, right? When that relationship moves from one directional to two directional. I hope that some of what I've shared today gives you a little bit of a better picture of what it feels like to be inside of the community and in a relationship, right? With both our coaches and the other women who have made that decision. And I'll just say, if that sounds like your kind of tribe, you can take the first step to really looking into what we have available for you by going to brilliant-balance.com. That's our online home. I know lots of podcast listeners haven't necessarily been to the website. It's a good place to take a look. You also can DM me if you're an Instagram follower at @Skolnicki. Just send me a DM and be like, I'm so curious about this. Like, how can I learn more? And it's not scary. I promise we will happily widen our circle to welcome you in. So that is all for today, my friends. Until next time, let's be brilliant.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.